Good afternoon. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. We've known each other a short time, but we've done some really interesting and very cool things. If I could rename our inclusive rifle insert system, which is a standalone plate specifically designed for women around some of the, many of the challenges that a designer faces in producing this equipment, I would rename it Good Idea Time Is Over, because there has been a lot of work done in a lot of different areas. I would encourage everyone to look at the work that's been done with NASA and more especially a full female flight space crew. The equipment challenges there were incredibly difficult, and I promised my mother 45 years ago I'd never do math in public, so I can't tell you how those equations were come up with. We're going to talk about Highcom. We're going to talk about the challenges, our equipment. It's a little bit about myself. 22 years SOF, and after retirement, 18 years currently in the defense industrial base. One of my biggest challenges and greatest rewards was implementing female engagement teams under advanced force operations and operational preparation of the battle space for some of our special operations missions. After retirement, I worked on a next strain helmet-mounted device issue, looking at muscle morphology and especially for the fighter pilots, helicopter pilots, etc., how we could better design that equipment, better design the helmet to offset those unique challenges. I began working for Dr. Karen Carpenter at Polestar Technologies. We did a number of very, very interesting small business innovative research projects, one of which included measuring oxytocin, how that can be measured in the field, how it can be used to look at some of the other factors of hormones and chemical imbalances or advantages in the field. Shoot ahead to the Air Force female fitment program at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Again, I can't say enough about the work that's being done in the human performance lab there. At that time, it was led by Major Sally Rodriguez. I understand there's a new person in charge. It's now morphed into the BEAM working group from DoD. That meeting is going to be held on the 13th of March out in Ohio. I believe they meet biannually. Did a little work with the NASA Artemis program, as I mentioned, and from this point forward, we're looking at the total solution. One piece of equipment doesn't make the total difference. Body armor is one factor. Headborne protection is a second factor, and unique to biometrics of women, biomechanics rather. Footwear is probably one of the biggest leave-outs. Everything, I'm going to steal this from Catherine, shrink it, make it pink, and that's not the answer. We know that's not the answer, and there's a lot of different folks looking into this, and I know that they did a study of 14,000 service personnel who said that's their number one complaint was footwear. So who is Highcom? Founded in 1997. Personal protective equipment, body armor, ballistic protection as it were. We manufacture armor, helmets, ballistic shields to Drug Enforcement Agency, which is a little bit different than the National Institute of Justice standard, which is completely different from the DoD standards. So we have a lot of moving parts and a lot of challenges that we have to face as a manufacturer to get you the equipment that you need. We are more or less putting most of our effort toward the National Institute of Justice standard. It's the largest consumer of body armor, but DoD is absolutely our front sight focus at this point. We have an ongoing CRADA with Army Research Lab and Natick Soldier Systems Center for these developments. And how it's done is through our XT Clave technology, which we'll talk about in depth in just a minute. We've delivered over 1 million pieces of body armor in the last decade without failure, penetration, recall. 2022, we had a CEO change, and Sally Nordine came in as our CEO. She brought me on shortly after that. She's a West Point graduate, U.S. Army officer. She's lived the problem. She understands it. She made it known to our development team in no uncertain terms that female and small statured personnel is our #1 priority to fix that. It's going to be a little redundant for me to tell you about the female fit problem, but I'll do it as best I can. Discomfort, limited mobility, compromised protection are just the grassroots of the larger problem. It applies across the board to any person in service, whether that be DOD, combatants, law enforcement, or first responders. A lot of our reports, sadly, but truthfully, come from the Australian and the UK in general. They've been addressing this problem for more than 8 years. Our overarching headquarters is located in Australia. They work closely with their ministries of defense, and we're able to get a lot of incredible, never before seen cooperation. So legacy armor issues, compromised positioning of vital torso protection, VTP, limited range of motion while wearing these systems, exposure of lateral breast tissue, and that's exacerbated under load, restrictions in vehicle ingress and egress. And we can't say enough about the excessive weight of the current systems. The worst case scenario is females have all opted for life-threatening or life-altering surgery to get a better fit for their equipment. Now, I don't have first-hand knowledge of that, but our folks in Australia have talked about it. And I'm not going to read Amanda's experience. I'll give you a minute to digest it. It just sounds creepy when I do it. I think the biggest takeaway is what should never be said or have to be said is it helps us fit in. So that introduces the IRIS protection system, inclusive rifle insert system, and this is it. Okay, you should pass it, or do you want to? You can pass it around so you get a better feel. The weight of this, this particular piece of armor is a standalone rifle protection plate. It's more than half the weight of current issued armor. It's been designed to contour to the female anatomy, and the question is going to come, I'll say it up front. Logistically, people in leadership on the logistical side of the house was worried about how many different sizes, etc. We've been able to, in working with some of the science offices in Australia, come down to 4 sizes that fit 87% of the combat fit personnel. The remaining 13%, we add an additional 3 sizes, so 7 in total, and that covers nearly everyone. We use advanced materials, cutting-edge manufacturing techniques. You can see on the right of the screen, that's our XT Clave. It's proprietary to Highcom armor. It's patented, and what it does is provides an isostatic pressure completely surrounding when we're molding and forming the hard armor plates, as opposed to everyone else in industry who uses an axial pressure and it's a one-dimensional press, hence why the plates are more or less flat. We're able to introduce complex geometries, complex curvatures, and incorporate ceramics with our high-performing polyethylene. This is not standard, and it wouldn't be standard for when these plates become commercially available, when the first article testing is completed. But to get to the point where we are now, which is essentially four iterations, and we're well into our fifth turn at this, we have over 3,400 body scans, and this was done in cooperation with the U.S. Army. We were looking at persons who entered service, whether it be OCS or basic training, 75% into their training and 6 months after training, to get a snapshot of how the body changes and how the body changes during training and at essentially the best shape of their lives. So the body scan starts. We engineer prototype samples for fit, institute the final manufacturing, adding our secret sauce, as it were, which is just how the polyethylene, ceramics, and any other additives go into the plate manufacture, come in, and it'll be issued. So I said we're in the fourth iteration of this design, now into the fifth, because of one of the biggest problems that we heard of, and it's sort of the unicorn of body armor, and that's the skipping effect. What is happening, regardless of male or female, the biggest threat to law enforcement officers is from being shot as they approach the vehicle window, being shot in an upward angle, and that bullet skipping up. We're working with our manufacturers and some very, very high-performing science and technology folks, you'll see some today, in mitigating that skipping effect. What's most important takeaway for this room and those online is you're already introducing that angle of incidence because of the shape of the female form. So we're really concentrating now, after we've proven the effectiveness, the comfort, the fit, and the enhanced protection. Now we're looking at any other threats or hazards that might be attributed to that. So NIJ, which is the governing body, National Institute of Justice, is the governing body of law enforcement armor for many years. As long as I've been in the armor game, there was one standard, 0101.06, and for the last 4 or 5 years they teased that the 07 standard was coming out. It was just released. As a matter of fact, 3 weeks ago was the manufacturers meeting at the NIJ workshop. They've changed the levels 1, 2, 3, 3A, 3+ enhancements, and they've made it an RF2 and RF3. Most significantly, they included female armor in their testing standards, which is fantastic, except no one could produce female armor with curvatures, so it's just more or less a placeholder. Enter Highcom, and now we're working with them and working with industry to figure out what that standard test is going to be to prove it. We also are working with armor industry professionals. Catherine has made it a carrier that I think is far superior to anything that I've personally seen, and it absolutely meets all of the requirements that she alluded to earlier to help. We're also engaged with some other folks for a lifting of the carriage. It's the pressure, the weight on the chest that yields the most, as I understand, the most discomfort. We're looking at a system between the front and back plates that actually lift that load off. Essentially, it's a spring clip type of design to remove that extra pressure. So in summary, we've talked about the issues. We talked about the iris plate, and we talked a little about ongoing efforts and the status of our system currently. Sally Nordine unfortunately couldn't be here, our CEO, but her contact information is on the screen, and I wholeheartedly encourage you to reach out to her. And my contact information is here, and I'll be around for the rest of the day. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Men,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing intellectual property concerns, has any of the technology, or at least the bigger ideas of Highcom, been shared for purposes of bettering men's protective gear?
One team, one fight.
Yep.
Right? So there will be cast-off advantages, cast-off improvements to standard, call it men's armor, but across the board, it's going to improve all of the armor because of the weight reductions and the moving from an isostatic to a moving to isostatic from an axial pressure.
Not all men have the same body type.
Right. Where we're going to see it universally advantageous is in the helmet designs, which is a very complex thermoformed, generally thermoformed currently. What we're going to be able to do is introduce other materials in the manufacturing process rather than an aftermarket process or after manufacture process. Yes, ma'am.
Around a SAPI level protection or higher than that?
So this has been tested to level 3 plus, and the SAPI plate. One of the artificialities of this plate, the technology is actually thinner by about 5 to 7 millimeters thinner. You can feel on the back it's sort of spongy. It's because until Catherine made a complex curvature carrier, no one did, so we had to add essentially foam or shock dissipation material behind it in order to fit the carrier so it could be tested.